Good evening, everyone. The Alumni Relations Committee of IIFT is extremely excited to welcome you all to the inaugural ceremony of the Alumni Roundtable Conference. We are delighted to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed speakers who will share their valuable experiences and insights. All the views expressed in this discussion are the personal views of all the speakers set in their personal capacity and have no association with the professional organizations and brands. The event will be moderated by Mr. Venkat, an alumnus from the PGDIT batch of 84-85. He is currently the Adjunct faculty at the Singapore Management University. He has diversified experience in global marketing of consumer products for over 17 years. He teaches marketing and strategy courses in SMU and ESSEC Business School. He is also the host of Move Conversations, a YouTube channel where together with his IIFT classmate, Mr. Mrigank Ojha, they have interviewed many senior IIFT alumni who are leaders in their fields. We thank you, sir, for being our moderator for the day and for all the guidance along the way that has made this event possible. It is with immense pleasure that I introduce our panelists. Mr. Namita Mandiraka. She is an IIFT alumnus from the MBIP batch of 99, who's currently the Global Consumer and Marketing Insights Director at Unilever. She has over 18 years of experience in brand craftsmanship and marketing working at Unilever. Mr. Prashant Chacko. He is the alumnus from the MBA IB batch of 2000-2002 from IIFT. He is currently working as the category CEO, Head Hair Fashion at Godrej Consumer Products Limited. An extremely experienced individual, Mr. Chacko holds over 20 years of experience in the field of sales and marketing. Mr. Suyash Mehrotra is the Deputy General Manager of International Business at Emami Limited. He is the alumnus from the MBIB batch of 2007-2009. He has worked extensively in driving enterprise sales and consumer businesses and has over 12 years of experience in his field. We thank all the panelists for taking time out from their busy schedules and being a part of this event. Mr. Venkat is joining us from Singapore. Ms. Namita is joining us from London. Mr. Prashant is joining us from Nairobi, and Mr. Suyash is joining us from Gurgaon. With such diverse panelists, we are sure that this discussion will have a truly global perspective. The audience members can put in any questions that they might have in the link mentioned in the description. We now request Venkat sir to proceed with the discussion and hope that our audience has a great time listening to our esteemed speakers.
Thank you, Ashi. And thanks, Akshay and Spandan, for putting the event together. It's an honor to host the first IIFT Alumni Roundtable. It's my privilege to have Namita, Prashant, and Suyash as my panelists. They bring rich experience in the marketing of FMCG products around the world. Full disclosure, Namita, my family and I use a lot of Unilever products. Definitely Dove, right? Prashant, I come from a home with people with white hair. So any doubts about using Godrej products? None at all. Suyash, there are a couple of products I looked around from your current employer, but from Nestle and Marico, plenty. In fact, with my SMU colleague and friend, Professor Seshan Ramaswamy, we wrote a consumer marketing case study on Marico, Bangladesh. As it was mentioned in the introduction, I've had experience in marketing consumer products like you all in Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America, and so on. Now I teach marketing and strategy, as Ashi mentioned. So I look forward to learn a lot from you all from today's discussions. So a couple of opening comments that Namita, Prashant, and Suyash would like that before we start the rounds.
No, just to say we're looking forward to the discussion, Venkat, and we are delighted and honored to have you moderating the panel. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Same emotion here. I think we're the privileged ones, and we're looking forward to the next hour or so on a subject that all of us are quite passionate about. So it promises to be good fun.
Thanks.
For me, it's always good to be back in IIFT. So one way or the other, getting to meet all of you, I think it's a great honor, and I really look forward to this discussion.
Great. Then let's begin the sort of first segment where we could talk about the triggers that are causing the customer preference shifts. So, especially, from a global perspective, Namita, what do you see are the customer preference shifts that you're seeing around the world, and what are the triggers that are causing them? And after Namita, Prashant, and Suyash, you can respond based on your experiences and your geographies.
Sure. So, Venkat, there's a lot that all of us would be able to talk about in terms of triggers. I think starting from the demographic changes that are happening in the world. I mean, there are some really interesting books which are coming out. There's this book called Empty Planet, which I recently read, and there's a sea change in demography. I think we will add 1 billion plus people to the planet by 2030. Most of these will be from emergent and emerging economies. And at the same time, on the other hand, people are living longer, they're having less children. And that creates, the fact that the fastest growing consumer cohort will actually be the over 65s. And, so there are a lot of demographic shifts that are happening in the world, which we can talk about. There is, of course, the fact that, there is a fundamental sea change that has happened in terms of triggers brought about by COVID and the whole environment of acceleration, which we could talk about. We could also talk about the fact that, conscious consumerism is on the rise, and, people are spending a lot of time, and, most of us will know that from our friends and family as well. We spend a lot more time being conscious about both the social stand that the brands that we are involved in are taking, as well as perhaps what goes into these brands, the ingredients, the transparency, the sustainability creds, and all of that. Those are being scrutinized much more carefully. The one thing that I think are new things that I would like to also talk about are, one is just the way people spend their time and money is changing, right? And if you think of an industry like gaming, it's set to touch 300 billion, very, very soon. And Accenture brought out a really interesting report which said that it's actually bigger than music and movies together.
It is.
Yeah, so it's incredible, right? And we wouldn't have sort of dreamt about that 15 years back when most of us started our careers. So it's the way that people are spending their time and their money, which has also led to a completely different set of triggers. If you think about industries like influencers and things like that, so there's this whole sort of ecosystem that is changing around us. And of course, some things stay the same. So maybe, I'll pass on to you.
Wonderful overview. Yep. Guys?
Sure. If I can jump in, I think another very significant trigger that facilitates many of what Namita just said is interconnectedness. I think the fact that a trend that starts anywhere in the world can soon be on the devices or in the palms of people across the globe is also making the speed of change much more rapid. It's also making, in especially, say, the traditional developing economies, it's clearly drawing out partitions on the kinds of consumers there are. Because my kind of rule of thumb has always been that the top 10 to 15% of any developing country is as developed and as exposed as anybody in the world, right? And that becomes a challenge where, when you look at countries across Africa, across Asia, you'll find various strata of users, all of whom operate at very different levels, all of whom are driven by probably very different drivers. Yeah, and I find that a very fascinating challenge and a very fascinating trigger as we look at our businesses.
Suyash, what do you see?
I think the key trigger that I'm seeing, I think, is the change in the ecosystem of innovation per se. I think 12, 13 years back when I was in B school, innovation pretty much meant well, startups. And those, at least in India, were far and few. Today, if you look at the entire ecosystem, it's changing. It's changing rapidly. You have money flowing into startups. You have companies who are looking to create innovation groups within the company itself. You have family offices which have started investing in new age companies. I recently came across this from one of the executives of this amazing company, Right Solutions, based out of US. They work on softwares and a lot of other tools for naval forces, actually. And they have this amazing concept of having a intranet internal stock market system, whereby every employee can actually come up with an idea. Now, every idea is treated like a stock. All other employees, be it a receptionist or the CEO, can actually trade in that idea. And they are allowed to voluntarily work on those projects. The project which garners the maximum inputs is the one which is taken forward. Now, what I really liked about this entire concept was the democratization of innovation. It's no longer limited just to the handful few at the top of the ladder. So as they say, innovation should not be the onus only of the few at the top of the leadership ladder. So that kind of democratization is what I'm seeing across the world. India, which for long actually lagged behind in terms of innovation. We come from a fairly safe kind of a socioeconomic background. Government jobs were always the best. I think I'm seeing a seaside change in the last 5-6 years where a lot of young guys are willing to forsake campus placement jobs, start up something of their own. And the kind of work that they're doing both in tech as well as non-tech sectors, I think it's amazing. I couldn't have realized that there would be a time in India that you'll have 10, 12 startups turning unicorn in 1 year. And that just happened this year.
Right. Interesting, Suyash, that you mentioned about how, innovative ideas are chosen in that US company. Actually, if I remember correctly, one of the pioneers of that idea was Valve, and whose product Steam is pretty well known among the gaming community. They had the staff doing all of that. But, given the scope our, students and, IIFT have given us, I think, maybe we should sort of like limit the tech part of it, occasionally bring it in the context of, your professional experiences all of you have in consumer product area, but tech is always fascinating. Namita, you laid out a lovely set of things that are coming up from a, consumer choice perspective, consumer decision perspective. So would you like to throw some light on any other particular ones that caught your eye among the various points that you sort of set out for us for this segment?
I think a couple of things. I think one is, I guess, a reinforcement of how important it is to know your consumer and really know your consumer in the sense that, CPG and FMCG has typically been, most of the purchasing power has been women traditionally. But I recently read this United Nations report, which talks about the fact that not only is it still around 70-75% of consumption in the G7 is women led. That number is expected to increase as the pay gap starts, narrowing even further. And therefore, it's, I guess, even more important to understand that when you are entering an arena of such change, it's even more important to know your consumer. Know your consumer not just from a cohort perspective, from an age perspective, from a geography perspective, but really personally, what are the things that your consumer cohorts or tribes actually want? And they may be different, and they are increasingly different as we enter into more and more personalization and customization. So I think that's one to watch out for. And the other thing is, of course, the whole conscious consumerism thing that I talked about, where people are consciously consuming brands and choosing brands And it's much more conscious decisions, just because the number of brands in the markets is growing and people are more aware, and social media is having an effect. So I think those two are really interesting ones to watch.
Great. Prashant, do you see some of them in developing markets that you're focusing on?
No, absolutely. It's everywhere, and the challenge in a time of such change, and when you add a shock like COVID into it, the challenge is always to run after the shiny new thing or the shiny new trend, right? And it's something that we see around us always, because there's something new that you see and you want to put all your company's resources behind it. I think the point Namita raised is very interesting. It's that at the heart of it, I think we've got to always have a first principles approach, which is, irrespective of the change, are we able to isolate unmet needs in the spaces that we play, right? That's the absolute core of it, right? Just keeping our kind of mental faculty aimed at finding unmet needs, right? After that, the next two steps are the simpler ones. You find products that meet those needs, and then you create, great stories or whatever to sell them to people. And for me, that's the construct that quite often, we lose sight of when we get caught up in the extent of change that's happening. And I think the more successful marketeers, the more successful businesses strike that fine balance really well. Yes. Okay. So let's say the way my consumers are shopping has changed fundamentally. Okay, that's fair. In that new shopping experience, what is the unmet need in buying my product, right? And that's really where innovation happens for us. That's really where we find new vectors for growth, right? I think that's a construct that helps me a lot, and that's just my kind of 2 bits on this subject.
Quick follow-up on that, and this is open for all of you. How do you spot those unmet needs that, Prashant, you specifically talked about, Namita alluded to? How are you guys, or companies in your industry tracking, spotting them? What's happening over there?
So I think from my side, we spend a lot of time and energy staying close to our consumers. We want to be with them every step of the way. And I think, if I had to condense everything that we do, it's really about saying that we have to be consumers. We have to, partner consumers. We have to understand them. We have to empathize with them. And obviously, there's a lot of surround, in terms of tools and techniques and technology. But that's really what it is at the heart of it. You have to live the life that your consumers have. You have to live with them. You have to almost, empathize with them. So that's my sort of 2 bits, and maybe Suyash or Prashant would like to add to that.
Sure.
Venkat, actually, my personal template that at least I have followed and I can vouch for is fairly uncomplicated. It's all about chasing the money. Where's the money for us to get actually involved and find those consumer gaps. So if I were to talk specifically about markets like North America and Europe, now not many. So while there is a lot of talk about younger population, we getting on to social media and stuff, not many people actually realize that the population in these markets, which are the most developed markets, the average age group is already in somewhere around 38 to 45. And the other part, which people don't realize, is that this is the cohort group which has a lot of money. They're also one of the most educated lot. And that, to a large extent, is actually driving the whole concept of what Namita rightly pointed out as conscious consumerism. Your predilection towards health-based food and personal skincare products. Because the more enlightened and educated you are, you realize your actions and how they are actually, saving or destroying the environment. And that is what has led to a spurt in the innovations that you see on the CPG side, be it plant-based foods, or one of the most interesting innovations that I've seen personally, probiotics or electrolyte-based skincare products.
True,
I
true.
never realized electrolyte-based drinks is what we used to have as athletes. Today,
True.
you have electrolytes, magnesium, calcium as part of your skincare products. And whether we like it or not, it's actually the entire movement is coming from the West, and it's the baby boomers in one way or the other who are actually driving it forward, and which will be picked up by, well, slightly younger groups in India and Asia. So that's how I at least like to take the topic.
Interesting. Very interesting perspective. True. You're seeing that. Prashant, you want to add on that before we move to the next segment? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I think, yes, you've got to be really close to what's happening with consumers and see them with empathy. Quite often we end up marketing to people who are not us, right? And therefore empathy becomes the key kind of skill that a marketer needs to learn very early. Because seeing the world through somebody earning $1 a day is not that easy. By reading about them or watching videos about them, you've got to live that life. And I think spending time with consumers is also can be quite overwhelming because you can see a lot. The simple questions that we tend to ask would be, let's say, one would be around penetration. I mean, are there under-penetrated parts of the category where those who use it, have a disproportionate benefit, or have a superior advantage, and those who have not had access to it. So that's one area to understand, right? Is there an unmet need here of either awareness or access, right? Or the other one is, even among people using a category or a subcategory, I think the questions to ask are, can we really make the usage of this much more convenient? Can we really make the usage of this much more affordable, right? Or better on some other axis, right? And I think if you have this small checklist of questions, you'll always be able to probe to see how can I make it better for her, right? In her usage experience. And that's pretty much where I think all the unmet needs really come out from.
True.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just the last point, I think it's very important to also never define the space that you're in on the basis of the product that you sell, right? But to define the space that you're in on the basis of the need that it satisfies.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely. Let's move to the other segment. Prashant earlier spoke about challenges. Suyash, during the COVID times, I noticed that you are working with companies and you are supplying to some of the largest retailers in the world, right? What challenges did you face? And we'll follow up with the others also. And then, of course, we'll look at other challenges, non-COVID challenges. But yeah.
Oh, I think there were plenty of challenges that we came up across. India has always been a base for supplying to global markets, whether be it commodities or actually packaged products. The scenario that we saw with ocean freights and logistic movement was unprecedented. I guess 15 months back, nobody would have realized that a container movement from Mumbai to New York, which generally happens at about $1,800 to $2,000, liners would start charging $10,000 for that. And I can imagine it has thrown the entire economics of global trade out of the window. There are containers which cost just about $16,000, $18,000. Now imagine if you're paying $8,000 to $10,000 just for ferrying the container from one place to the other, that's like 50% that you're spending on logistic costs. And it's not just that, even the raw material scarcity, the fact that now we are very closely linked to the global value chains, and many of those stood impacted once the COVID began, meant that you were actually scurrying for alternative suppliers, your alternative partners, things which usually used to take a couple of years. They were actually developed in record couple of months' time. The whole transition from office to work from home, couldn't have imagined. And we've been doing that now for almost 18 months without any perceptible drop in productivity, I guess.
Yeah. Others, Namita?
Sure. So, So COVID's obviously been a huge disruptor, and in many ways, and a huge challenge. I think the IMF came up with minus what 4.5% contraction in 2020 or something like that. But outside of COVID, I think there are a couple of things which are happening, which I'd like to talk about. One is the fact that while everybody is aligned in terms of direction of travel, I think everybody wants a cleaner society, a cleaner environment, more sustainability. I think the challenge to the industry is the speed and the scale with which we can get there, because that's where a lot of the hard work is being done. That's where a lot of effort needs to be put in, because it's not really about saying, okay, what's the direction we want to go in, and do we not want to go in this direction or whatever. I think the trends are very clear. The COP has made that even clearer. It's really about how fast we can get there, how much more we can do, how much at speed and at scale, where it actually starts creating an impact. And I think that's the challenge for all of us, as it is with industry, as it is with consumers, and so on.
Right.
And that to me is a big one. And the other one, I think, and I'm speaking here from a very marketing point of view. Maybe 10 years back, marketing used to be a lot less, I think, interesting than it is today. And it's I think the real challenge is in an environment where you're being inundated with information, inundated with data, practically 24 hours a day. How do you actually cut through to the consumer in a way that's still relevant, in a way that's still resonant, in a way that's meaningful? And it needs a far more, I guess, sophisticated skill set, because you have a plethora of channels, and you have specific skills, specific ways of looking at it. So you need to be a far better storyteller. You need to be far more connected to advancements in digital and different channels which are emerging, and different ways of telling that same brand story. And it's an equal path. It's very, very exciting, because there is so much more potential to tell that story. At the same time, it's also very challenging, because you need to rise up to that challenge and really develop that skill, that nuanced way of looking at things. So those two, I think, from my side, would be things which are outside of COVID, but really interesting opportunities and challenges, both together.
Right. Related to that, and this is open for everyone, including Prashant, are you guys seeing impact of omni-channel preferences? I mean, omni-channel got triggered a lot by COVID and the necessities of distancing and so on and so forth, but the omni-channel preferences were already setting in. But in your CPG space, do you see a lot of omni-channel preferences, and how are companies responding to the retailers who are pushing for omni-channel preferences?
Sure. Hi. Can you hear me? The screen froze.
Yeah.
I can start on this one. So,
yeah. Sure. Please.
Yeah. So yes, I think we're seeing in my line of work, I'm definitely seeing two things. One is omni-channel, and the other one is channel consolidation, right? So even markets like the ones in Africa, which have historically been laggards in the e-commerce space, have seen a massive boom on e-commerce, with, in places like South Africa, the largest brick and mortar retailers leading the way. Right?
True.
And I used to live in South Africa 5 years back. E-commerce was unheard of then. Now with COVID, the big chains are all delivering home, and nobody thinks of going back. So you see that dramatic shift, and obviously as companies, therefore, we need to start tweaking the kind of portfolios we play in, the kind of products we sell, etc. Equally, on the other hand, what we've seen is consolidation. So the large multi-category stores seriously thinking about the categories they don't sell and adding them into the repertoire, because they've just seen the opportunity with COVID, to add more categories to their store, because they realized that with lockdowns and things like that, consumers weren't allowed to go shopping to multiple places, right? And they were looking for one-stop shops in a way. And a lot of the retailers have taken advantage of that and extended their own portfolios, which suddenly means that a challenge for the company is channels which were traditional strongholds for them need not be the destination consumption points or the shopping points for consumers of the future. So there's a need to relook where you're even available in the first place, even in the physical world, keeping the digital world aside.
Yeah, I also want to kind of say that one of the things that surprised me was how fast the, Gen S, as we call them, have started becoming comfortable with e-commerce as well, because, a couple of,
Absolutely.
5 years back, people wouldn't have thought that technology adoption could be so smooth and so seamless among Gen S. But it's really nice to see that, now that they're in it, they're actually finding increasing comfort with buying things across different channels.
Mm.
And the other thing that I'd also like to talk about is there are lots of really interesting technologies which are coming up, which allow you to give a little bit more of a brand experience, even virtually. So, we've all heard of things like VR and AR and, all of those kind of things. But even something simple, like I'll give you an example from the color cosmetics industry. Matching something like a foundation is actually quite difficult when you try to do it on e-commerce. But now there are technologies which help you do that as well. And, these are things which are making it much more frictionless and, easy to sort of jump past the initial discomfort with technology, even for groups. And the other, I think, real game changer could be voice, because a lot of people don't come with the infrastructure that that you need to have. They don't come with, but something like voice, even if you're not a very literate person, or even if you don't know English or you don't know how to write, I think technologies like voice can really open up the whole electronic world to people like that. And I think that's really helpful from a D&E perspective.
Right. I'll come back to you on voice. Suyash, I'll let you go first on the existing current question.
So if you ask me, I guess omni-channel should have been crowned as the word of the year last year.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, true.
I think Oxford got it wrong. I think omni-channel should have been crowned as the word of the year. I think
and Time also should have put it as the thing of the year or whatever, right?
I can't tell you how many times I come across this word omni-channel, and it's like the marketeer's ultimate delight if we manage to achieve it. See, what has actually happened, and here's my take on post-COVID consumerism. I think consumers have become extremely ruthless also. So I hate to say it, but for somewhere, while industry had its own issues, and I pointed out few of my own: logistics, supply chain, sourcing, everything. Consumers have actually gone to the other extreme of demanding convenience.
Absolutely.
And that convenience should be everywhere. So if I step out of my apartment, the first shop, mom and pop store that I come across, that should also stock my favorite products. If I walk into a mall, that should also have it. Online, everybody's now become comfortable. You won't believe, my 65-year-old mom is extremely comfortable using the Flipkarts, Amazons of the world. So that's how it is. So I think that has also led to a kind of a rethink in how we want to market our products. I remember when I was in college, I used to read this thing written by, I think, Chris Anderson. He spoke about how with the advent of e-commerce, you'll be able to place the long tail products on e-commerce, something which you were not able to do on physical shelves. Shelves were always about, well, conserving shelf space. It's real estate at the end of the day. And e-commerce back in, I think, 2002 or 4, he saw it as the perfect medium to place your long tail products. I think we are seeing that now. While we've added convenience with e-commerce, to be honest, there is a lot of garbage also selling on e-commerce. So you have fly-by-night operators also, but that's actually the scene which is there. post-COVID, everything is available online and people's expectations are hard to fulfill. So consumers, be it in India or US or any other place, they've, well, at least to me, they've seen that they've become rather ruthless in their expectations.
So yeah, so basically, I mean, apart from the typical thought is like, hey, they are price conscious. That's not the only thing today, right? No. They are looking at like buy anywhere, pick anywhere, return anywhere conveniences, right? And price is one of the factors, but like many of these things are really important, and that for a supplier, for a retailer, right? That is, companies that you work for and your partners down the channel, it changes completely the cost, right? Because traditionally, when you were selling a piece of soap or a bottle of shampoo, it was costed for it to be sold through the channel at certain price point at a mom and pop store or at a big chain retailer. And there is a service which was expected. Most of it was not much of a service. Customer did everything, right? Now you got to, between you and your retailer, you got to cost everything into that. And so that's completely changing. The expectations have gone up. But what about the costs to deliver those kinds of expectations?
I think that's where we need to factor in some innovation, actually. I remember before COVID, whenever we were asked this question of e-commerce replacing physical brick and mortar stores, we always used to say that, hey, try to factor the logistic cost for transporting, say, one packet of Maggi. That would be huge.
Right.
Imagine if I were to just transfer one packet of Maggi from selling online, the cost would be humongous. Right. So today, what companies are doing, and I think they are doing it very smartly. And again, a lot of learning comes from US on that part, is that you start creating bespoke products so that there is lesser of channel conflict. So probably an SKU size that you see on online e-commerce or a warehouse club store like Costco, you'll not find it on the regular shelves of Walmart or others. And I think that's a learning which even Indian CPG players have taken into account. So today, if you browse Amazon or Flipkart for your regular products, many of those are not actually the SKUs which you'll find on the shelf. So I think somewhere they have played that price premium thing very, very smartly. I don't want to reveal more secrets, but it's almost akin to what we used to do with, remember those biscuit things? So the price remains 10. The biscuit grammage always used to keep going down. Consumers never realized it, but yeah.
They did, but yeah, agreed. Yeah, perfect. Prashant and Namita, interesting, Suyash. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, and I think the smarter companies play this very well, where they have the long tail products only available online and the short tail products available in physical stores. So that when the consumer wants that long tail product, she's also paying for the convenience of actually getting it and paying the necessary premium to support the service. And in general, while consumers in general are very value conscious, that equation of benefit and price is constantly churning in their mind. It's not just the price. It is, what am I getting for the price? And if I'm getting something that I can't find everywhere for a certain premium, for the convenience of getting it delivered to my door, at least in my industry, what we've seen is they're very clearly willing to pay that premium. Right? So I think that's the thing. Absolutely. And finding the sweet spot there and not putting everything everywhere and playing your cards well, so that you really know what value are you giving her. For something widely available, widely penetrated, there is no disproportionate value for her to buy it on Amazon, right? And therefore she won't pay any premium. But for something that's not available, there is disproportionate value there because it's rare, and that's where you're able to absorb some of these costs, etc., and still be acceptable to her. I think that's the heart of it, understanding value and thinking beyond price.
fortunately, I would think that like all of us with the CPG background, there's not that, returns is not that big an issue. I'm sure there is some amount of it, but think about apparel retailers. In fact, the Apparel Retail Association, they did a massive research, which is available online because they, as a public organization, they put it out with a consulting company in UK, and it's awesome. I mean, the amount of cost that goes in for buy online, pick and store, pick anywhere, return anywhere, and then return logistics, the whole, that opens a completely different Pandora's box, right, for them. So anyway, yeah, we are in a different category probably. So let's leave that. Let's use the time to move to the next segment, which was innovation. And since Namita, you volunteered with the reference to voice, so I'm going to get that round started with you. It is right, whether it is Alexa or Google and so on and so forth. The top of the mind question that I have on the voice issue is, as marketers, how are you going to get that position, right? Today, when we look at search on Google, for example, right? On the laptop, maybe 10 results come out, right? On the mobile, maybe 5, right? If you, I don't know, if I use the name of one of those voice brands or somebody's house, it will get activated. So yeah, if you say, Alexa, order this, then, or, search for it, then how are you all going to find that top spot? Because the 10 has become 5 on mobile, 5 is now, will it become 1? How are you going to find that sweet spot?
I mean, I think my point here is conceptually, nothing really has changed, because even say 30 years back, if your brand was not top of mind or spontaneously recalled, it had no hope in hell of being bought. Or the top of mind of spontaneously recalled brands would be the ones that would gain 80% of the market, right? It's just there's an evolving technical challenge each time there's a new technology that comes in. So there's a technical challenge for the marketer to now remain spontaneously aware on voice search, right? I define it like that, and yes, and that's where this category or this job that we do is so exciting, because we're constantly learning new things. But the concept remains the same, right? You've got to have top bracket salience to be large, right? And that doesn't fundamentally change. Tomorrow, when it may not be voice, you could be thinking of a product that you need, and it might be ordered, right? But even there, the concept doesn't change. You've got to be salient, right? And in an increasingly fragmented media or advertising world, it again puts the onus back on the absolute fundamentals of brand storytelling. So just having a very coherent narrative across every touch point, right? And kind of being really sharp about catering to consumer needs very well. It goes back to the very basics, right? The technical challenges will keep evolving, and we'll have to keep evolving our tools for that. But the fundamental principles, according to me, don't really change.
True. Suyash?
Oh, exactly. I think we can't commit where the technology scene would be in the next couple of years. I anyways feel scared at times that when I'm even discussing a brand or a product within my home, and all of a sudden I go on Google search, the Google is able to predict the brand that I'm about to actually type. So sometimes it's actually kind of scary. So I really don't know. So I kind of agree with Prashant and Namita. Voice, thinking 3 years down the line, God knows how we would be doing. But I think the consistency in the message still remains critical for a marketer. I think the number of touch points have increased drastically. I think probably 8, 10, 15 years back, e-commerce advertising would hardly feature in our marketing budgets. Today, it's pretty much 80-90% of what we spend. And so again, I don't want to be doing the future gazing here, but this is an extremely fluid space. And as marketers, I think the onus is on us to ensure the consistency of a message remains across all touch points for the targeted consumers.
It's fascinating to discuss about tech, application of tech in marketing, e-commerce.
Absolutely.
And I think Namita alluded to some of the product and e-commerce integration, in terms of skincare, skin coloring, and so on and so forth. But I wanted to see if there are other innovations that you guys are seeing in your markets, just to trigger some idea. Prashant, Godrej Consumer Products recently launched your paper mosquito repellent, but I remember that like in 2013 you launched the hit magic paper in Indonesia, and that time I used to talk about globalization and give some of these things as an example, and this was one of those examples that like how companies can tap their global network and take product innovations from one geography across the world and so on. So just to trigger your thoughts, not to be specific on a company or the brand, so just wanted to know, are you guys seeing other interesting product innovations, service innovations, some things responding to some of like Namita's talk about, conscious consumerism and so on and so forth. What are you guys seeing in those areas? Other innovations other than tech?
So maybe I can give this one a go, Venkat.
Sure.
Just because, today, and I'm going to talk about one of my favorite innovations, and it's one that probably not too many people would be aware of. But there's this company called Hourglass. It's one of our brands in Prestige. And, I'm one of those people who always want to be vegan, but, who lack too much awareness about it, and, who don't know whether the choices they're making are always the right ones. So recently I learned from Hourglass that, for many years, the sort of industry standard in red coloring, which is used very universally in color cosmetics, comes from carmine. And carmine actually comes from crushed beetles, crushed female beetles.
Right.
And to the point where, to make a pound of carmine, it takes about 70,000 female beetles. Now, if you're, a very passionate, cruelty-free vegan kind of a person, then you're going to love this because Hourglass actually came up with a plant-based pigment which mimics the carmine color, but which is completely cruelty-free. And I think it's, for so many years, this industry has not had that kind of an option. So it's probably, it's a fantastic innovation of consumers wanting something. Innovation teams sort of jumping on it and saying, okay, how can we make this happen? And then, just creating a real discontinuity in the color cosmetics market, which is now, launched. So for those of you who are on the Western Hemisphere, do check it out. I think it's cruelty-free, and I absolutely love that as an example of innovation.
Great.
And then, there's lots of other stuff. I think, vegan, for example, for years had ice cream, which at least in this part of the world was not always vegan, right? And it's always got, when you think of one of our most indulgent brands, Magnum, they actually came up with a vegan offering. And having eaten enough of those vegan ice creams, I can, vouch for the fact that they're absolutely excellent. So again, if you can get your hands on a Magnum vegan, please do. It's literally the same kind of indulgence, and it's completely vegan. So it's again, a great example of a consumer need and some really good innovation behind it. And then, of course, there's lots of stuff on engagement, which we could talk about. Things like, brands saying no animal testing, and I know Dove's been sort of the forefront of that as well. A lot of packaging innovation. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in that space, and I'm really excited by that, actually.
Prashant, Suyash, now you got to match it and excel with better, more lively examples now. I mean, like my mouth is watering, right? Like for the Magnum. Yeah.
So maybe let me take you from something more mouth-watering to something which is good for your skin, actually. So I think taking cues from Namita on vegan and sustainability initiatives, obviously it's a demand from the consumers also. I think I'll try to draw upon the ecosystem again for this kind of work. What we are living in very interesting times where we are seeing the confluence of actually science with your actual products that you are using. For the very first time, all these innovations that you are seeing, that they are really for the first time backed with actual science. So if you look at, there's this research done by a non-profit group called Environmental Working Group. They have something called as a skin deep database. What they do is that they've classified close to about 9,000 different additives, ingredients coming from natural plants, and they've given them scores. So you have a EWG score of say 1, which is very good for something like turmeric sourced from India. Now, what they've done is they've simplified the science. And now, if I'm an entrepreneur, if I'm looking for something in the skincare space, all I need to do is actually utilize that research already done by EWG and incorporate in my product. So it's something fact-based marketing. So in India, we've been talking about Ayurveda, Haldi, Chandan ke gun, all that stuff for ages, but we actually didn't know what's the science behind it. Now the science has been put, and this is what the entrepreneurs are utilizing. So if I were to give you an example, look at brands like Function of Beauty, Pros. What they do is they actually make bespoke concoctions of shampoos, conditioners, skincare products for you. And what they use are these additives, these chemicals, well, natural chemicals, all cruelty-free, vegan, sustainably sourced. And that is what consumers are lapping it up. And they are the ones who are actually playing on your conscious consumerism big time. You're willing to shell out something like $45 for a shampoo bottle, which, by the way, you can actually get a Pantene almost 1 gallon for $12 out of Costco, but you're still willing to shell out $45 just for a 300 ml shampoo because it's sustainably sourced with chemicals and ingredients which have a EWG score of 1. So I think that kind of a research and science-led ecosystem is the next frontier for packaged food, as well as, well, CPG products in general.
Right. Wonderful. Prashant, in many of the markets that you deal in, halal will be very important. So for you guys, do you guys focus on that and you build on that opportunity across the globe?
Not halal as much, but the broader theme of halal is inclusion, right? Or or not having exclusive products, right? Products that are only designed for certain consumer groups. And I think inclusion is probably one of the big mega themes in the beauty industry globally, right? And a bulk of the work that we do is with people of African origin. And that's been a space which has seen a lot of it, because beauty brands historically have been designed for Caucasian skin. So you take, say, the Rihanna-fronted Fenty Beauty, right, where her fundamental proposition is color cosmetics whose skin tones are designed to match African-American skin, right? And that's a very rich proposition space and under the same overarching thing of inclusion, right? Or even if you look at closer to home, the line of work that I'm in, so a part of the business that we are in is hair extensions. And if you look at hair extensions globally, the market is always created for and designed by East Asians for Caucasians, right? Whereas the biggest consumer group were African Americans or Africans, right? So just being able to think through what are African American hair textures or what are African hair textures and how do you design products to mimic those hair textures is again a significant space in inclusion in beauty. And I think that's an area that we do quite a bit of work on with our products as well.
Wonderful. I think we could, this is, we're almost at an hour mark, and I think we could take some of the audience questions that are coming up. So give me a second. You guys can also look at it on the chat, and if you want to pick anything and volunteer first. Meanwhile, I'm also looking at some of them. Yeah, Namita, and for everyone, there's one question on like, how is the buying experience going to change? Of course, it's a little more focus on the retail side with self-checkout, service kiosk, and AI-based shopping carts, and so on and so forth in Amazon Go stores and things like that. You guys want to, there was a segment for future gazing. So yeah, go ahead. And how do you see that?
Sorry, Venkat. So the question is, how do you see the frictionless retail evolving? Is that the question?
Yeah, the entire buying experience, how is frictionless? How is it going to change? I mean, you partially answered it that it's going to be frictionless, but like, are there other points that you want to add on that? And
so I think from my point of view, I think the consumer is and always will be king. And they will want what they want, where they want, and in the time that they want it. And delivery models will have to evolve with the demands of a consumer who is increasingly, getting more and more choice and more options. So, but yes, I think the key word for me would be frictionless. I think for a long time, shopping has been a chore. And unless it's a really experiential shopping trip, you kind of want it to be as fuss free and as painless and as easy as possible, and that there's going to be a lot of focus around that. I know that in some of the stores now you just sort of scan in with your app and then you just pick up whatever you want and you leave, and you get billed automatically to your account, so you get the receipt emailed to you. So that's the kind of experimentation that's happening in that space. I also read the only other thing that I want to talk about is that it's also going to become, in my view, much more experiential. And the reason I'm saying that is because there are things which you do want to experience, you want to discover, and I think that the process of shopping will also evolve to make that discovery and that experience much more fun. So, for example, there's this retailer in Europe who's actually experimenting with growing herbs inside the store. So you just go in and you snip off as many as you need and you come back. And I think it's such a brilliant idea, right? Because there's no better...
it takes fresh to a different level, right?
Exactly, it takes fresh to a different level. So you just go in and you snip it off, and there's no plastic, no packaging. You just put it in whichever box. Where I stay, there's also this shop which allows for zero wastage. So you just go in with your own container, fill it in, and come back. So I think to I guess cut a long story short, there's a frictionless element, there's an experiential element, and there's a sustainability element. And I think all of those will continue to evolve in that space.
Right. You want to add on to that?
Sure, I can go. I think friction is a very important point, and quite often it's only discussed in terms of what the retailer needs to do. I think manufacturers also have as much of a responsibility on making shopping easy, and the heart of that is in resisting the challenge to proliferate products based on every little trend or every little nuance that you see. Because the more choice you give a shopper on the shelf, the harder you're making it for her to choose the right one for her. So I think it's a fine balance. There is a necessary choice, and there is more than what is necessary. Striking that fine balance again is, I think, where companies that do well tend to be experts at.
True. Suyash, anything, or should I give you the next question?
Yeah, I'll take the next one actually.
Yeah, so this is a point which we have in the discussion touched upon at multiple points, but in case something that you guys want to add on, the question is how can we better identify consumer trends to give our brand an edge? So
I think it's again what I like to call as opportunity seeking and being consumer centric. I think I see this question somebody's raised on the chat with regards to the trend on sports drink. I think beverage is becoming a very, very interesting battlefield right these days, and they somehow are targeting the guilt factor that we have with us. We all know that most of the beverages are laden with sugar. Everybody wants to consume less sugar. Everybody wants to have functional fortified beverages. And I think we've started seeing the trend going up again, starting with the West. Well, that's where much of my experience is. So let me again begin from there. So there's this company, for example, in Finland. I think it's called Health Lab something. So they actually sell fortified bottled water with addition of carotenoid, which apparently is very good for your eyes. So it becomes bottled water for your eyes. Namita probably would know this brand Coca-Cola. It's coconut water, but they've just added turmeric to it. Turmeric, which we've been knowing for ages in India, is a great product, but they've just added that and it becomes a whole new beverage. There's Belgium-based Eula sports drink. So what they've started doing is, it's an energy drink, but they've started adding super ingredients, herbs to their offerings, and it makes a whole new product. And it's not just the startups who are actually investing in this space. Even someone like Coca-Cola, they launched their product Coca-Cola Plus in Japan, which was actually targeted at, and Japan is one of the heavily aging population that they have. So they had Coca-Cola Plus targeted towards people in excess of 45, 50 years of age so that they can consume a soda-based beverage along with food. It didn't do well. It almost became a laxative for a lot of product and got a lot of brickbats on social media. But you got to see the trend that's going on. So it's becoming more and more obvious towards fortified and functional beverages. And that's also the trend even in packaged food or skincare products. The more good for you products that you add, the better it is in terms of consumer acceptance. And it's great for marketing communication, by the way. That's another, it's a marketeer's dream, playing with all those keywords, that it's got carotenoids, it's got some other amazing super ingredient or herbs. It's what we love actually doing.
Yeah, but one of the questions that has come up is that and many of these products go more to the up market, and that's natural, right? Where they start. Yeah. One of the question is, can emerging personalized brands target rural customers? I think whoever asked this question is going to be a future academic professor who will ask a tricky question in the examination.
See, I don't see. Go ahead, Prashant.
Yeah, conceptually, why not is my question, right? Because
for extra marks, you need to answer the how, Prashant.
Yeah. So and the how with catering to any rural or say bottom of the pyramid kind of consumer is about being very clear that they are actually more quality conscious than even higher income consumers, because for them that £1 or $1 spent is a far greater proportion of their earnings than someone richer, and therefore they're much more quality conscious. So the principles are this: just because they are poor, you don't, or they live in a rural area, you don't talk down to them. You genuinely give them value. I think that's the very heart of it. And the second thing is, because they're value conscious, they're not going to pay for any inefficiency in your system. So really using technology well in your back end, in your supply chains, in your factories, thinking through value offerings really well, so that there is no fat from your internal economics that you pass on to them. I would say these are the two kind of broad principles, and then I think any product can be widely penetrated.
True. Yeah, I agree. In fact, I think there's a question on whether people will post-COVID pay a premium for convenience, and I think Prashant and all of you answered that question that they would, and you're already seeing those trends. So I think I'll pass that. It's been answered actually. Yeah, there's one more question about how to train ourselves to be empathetic. That I think requires a separate panel discussion itself on how to be empathetic towards the customer. So we guys are setting up another panel discussion, right? Yeah, go ahead, guys. Quick responses that you guys have.
So I can certainly say that one of the things that works for me is go out, meet people, right?
Absolutely.
Not just don't call it consumers, meet people and try to think of that as the holistic, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's, I know I learn more from my son about technology and gaming, and he's all of 10. But his way of looking at ads is completely different to the way I look at ads. So I love watching ads, and I hate it when somebody skips ads. And for my son, everything is an irritant, and he wants to skip everything and install an ad blocker immediately. So it's just experiencing life, experiencing people, experiencing going out there and actually living the life that teaches you to be empathetic. And yes, it's a skill that I think can be cultivated as well.
So when he puts an ad blocker, do you think like घर में चूल्हा कैसे जलेगा if you keep doing this?
Yes. Exactly. No, and the tragedy is I love watching ads. So I actually, physically feel deprived when you have to move to the content.
Right.
But yeah, that's consumers feel.
Yeah. Guys, future gazing that some of you wanted to avoid. So I'm going to put you all back in a spot. What are the future gazing? I mean, we did quite a bit of it, but something which you have, haven't said so far, and before we wrap up, that you would like to talk about. I think we've got a lot of stuff so far, but like still.
So I can take a crack at it.
Yeah, sure.
I think simple answer for me: don't be stuck in the middle. I think consumers are either going premium or they're going really mass. The historical kind of thick in the middle, thick in the waist kind of category structures are going away very fast, and it's being rapidly replaced by a classic hourglass kind of shape. So there's always opportunities at the premium end, right, at scale, and there's still clearly opportunities at the mass end again at scale. Right. And kind of my advice to anybody would be don't be stuck in the middle, or don't even be thinking of designing for the middle, because that's rapidly shrinking.
Right. That's based on basically how do you design your value, right, for the customers, the whole spectrum of values that the customers are looking for. And if you sort of hybridize everything, then people don't see much of a value in it, right? So do you want to clearly define the values, like, okay, these are the things on which I'm strong, on price, on scale, on premium, on customization, on personalization, right?
It's also who you talk to.
Exactly.
When you're a large consumer goods company with a big kind of, let's say, below a certain SEC business, you can get complacent and say that is my core and that's all that I'll do. Right. Whereas I think it's quite clear that the top 20% in every country is able to consume at huge levels and pay premiums for it as well. And I think finding the balance between the two would be key to success for any of us.
True. Suyash?
I think the only message that I want to leave today, and it's something which I keep telling myself also, is that it's high time that we marketeers and even the budding marketeers who are watching this, I think it's high time that we start thinking as economists also. I really like the way economists think, because they're always fact-based. Every theory needs evidence. I think as marketeers, we often fall in love with the brands that we work with, and we stop looking beyond that. The way the consumers are changing, the way the ecosystem is changing around us, I think we need to be extremely fluid and be working on facts and figures rather than being over obsessed with the brands that we are handling. So just what Prashant said, I think going forward, it's hard to predict the future, how it would be, but I think somewhere we need to prepare ourselves as marketeers that the brands that we are owning, how are they placed so as to help the consumers in whatever way they want, rather than believing that our brand does the job. So I keep on saying that rather than trying to sell what we make, we should be making what sells.
What they want. Absolutely.
So I think that's the message that I would leave today's call as. It's something which I continuously keep telling myself also. Think like an economist. Don't be over obsessed with the brand that you're handling. Maybe. But yeah, someday I'll probably learn.
Yeah. Namita, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think the one thought that I'd like to leave behind is that there is every reason for all of us to be very optimistic and positive about what the future will hold. And I think there are so many signals. I think the level of consumer closeness, the level of dialogue that brands are having with consumers, the ease with which you can have it because of technology, etc., has never been as high as it is today. And it will just keep increasing. And then the other thing is, every time you see the kind of things that are happening in markets, when you look at an innovation which allows, disabled people to open, a can of deodorant, or if you look at the kind of work that is happening on, sustainability and, all of the things that we discussed, I think there are lots of reasons to celebrate, lots of reasons to be optimistic. And I think we should be absolutely proud of belonging to an institute which has, sort of ingrained that international perspective in us from the very beginning. So lots to look forward to, lots to celebrate as well.
Wonderful positive note to sort of wrap up this discussion. I think and one small response that I wanted to have for Suyash was like, Suyash said like, hey, think like an economist. Just as I was coming towards to think that economists have started thinking like marketeers with all the emergence of behavioral economics and so on, right? And like, whenever I read those, theories and papers, I'm like, as marketers, we always knew this, right? That the customer thinks differently, not exactly like the economic man or whatever you want to hypothesize, and then remove all the factors and consider only one. That never happens, right? So anyway, but interesting thing, and I would definitely give a thought. But I think the important takeaway, but which for all the audiences here, is what both Suyash and Prashant mentioned in this context is understand how the customer uses, and then Namita also mentioned it in the wrap up, was that like how the customer uses it, where do they use it, what are the unmet needs, what are the jobs to be done for them, right? Which your brand is delivering for them and is missing out on something, right? I mean, the classic example of like, Theodore Levitt always talking about like, the customer is buying a drill and, and so on and so forth. But like, hey, customer was never buying a drill, not the nail. He was not buying the hole also. He was buying a solution to hang something. And 3M came out with the command strips, right? Where you could hang them, stick them and hang them. And that was the solution customers were looking for. You wanted to hang something on the wall and then like take it off, and and if you want to sell the house or you want to give it back to your landlord, you didn't want a hole in the wall. So that's kind of a thing, right? The customer wants a solution, and then where can we do that? And I think, well, how can we fit in that? Thanks a lot, guys. Wonderful discussion. We could go on and on, common area of interest, but I think like at 8:50 Singapore time, and likewise in other geographies. So can I invite the students back to take over and wrap up the session for us? Hi, Smita.
Hello, sir. So yeah, we should move on to the thank you note from here. So on behalf of the Alumni Relations Committee of Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, I want to express appreciation for your presence at our inaugural edition of Alumni Roundtable, themed on evolving consumer preferences, challenges, innovations, and opportunities. It was an absolute pleasure having with us Mr. Venkat as our honorable moderator, and Mr. Namita Mandiraka, Mr. Prashant Chacko, and Mr. Suyash Mehrotra as our honorable speakers. And we sincerely appreciate you sharing your expertise and insights with all of us. Two very impactful statements made today were by Prashant sir, where he says, never define the space that you are in by the products you sell, but by the needs you are satisfying. And by Suyash sir, where he says, marketers need to think like economists. And I think my personal favorites were the live examples discussed by Namita ma'am on sustainability. But above everything, Mr. Venkat sir's enthusiasm and energy is what made this discussion extraordinary.
Absolutely.
I would like
Thank
to
you,
thank
guys.
Dr. I would like to thank Dr. Niti Nandini Chatnani and Division of Alumni Affairs for their unprecedented support. I would also like to thank each and every member of the Alumni Relations Committee for working so hard to make this event a success. Last but not the least, I extend my gratitude to each and every one of you who is present with us today in the audience for your enthusiastic participation. Once again, thank you panelists for making the inaugural Alumni Roundtable successful. And we hope to have the opportunity to have you here again in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate.